Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're tackling climate change.
Oh, yeah.
And let me tell you, you sent us a mountain of sources.
My mountain
YouTube videos, scientific papers, even some book excerpts.
Wow.
Clearly, you're on a quest for some serious knowledge.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable the sheer amount of information people have access to these days. It speaks to a growing awareness of the issue.
Right.
But it can also be overwhelming.
I bet.
Trying to sift through it all and make sense of it.
Exactly. So we're going to be your guides through this information jungle.
Okay.
Taking all those sources you sent and extracting the most important insights.
Oh, that's good.
One thing that really jumped out at me was this news about global temperatures hitting a new high in January, a whopping 1.75 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels.
Wow.
That's a pretty big leap.
It is.
And it seems like it's caught even some scientists off guard.
Yeah, it is a surprising jump.
Right.
Especially considering we were anticipating a slight dip in temperatures after the strong El Niño effect we saw in 2024.
Oh, okay.
But it's important to understand that El Niño and La Niña are naturally occurring climate patterns that cause these short-term temperature fluctuations.
Okay.
They don't change the underlying trend.
I see.
Which is, unfortunately, continued warming driven by human activities.
So it's like a roller coaster. There are ups and downs.
Yeah.
But the track itself is still going uphill.
Exactly.
And even before this recent jump, there were already some pretty worrying trends happening, right?
Right. For instance, we're seeing increasingly warmer ocean surface temperatures and a reduction in those sulfate particles in the atmosphere that actually help reflect sunlight back into space.
Okay.
This reduction is partly due to cleaner shipping fuels, which is good news for air quality.
Right.
But it seems to be having an unexpected impact on global temperatures. And then there's that alarming discovery of warming waters around Antarctica.
Oh.
Which has scientists really concerned.
Okay, so we've got this overall warming trend, and then you add on these recent spikes.
Yeah.
And it paints a pretty concerning picture.
It does.
And to make matters worse, one of the YouTube videos you sent from Just Have a Think highlighted something pretty scary happening in the Arctic.
Well,
it seems like a big chunk of it has flipped from being a carbon sink to a carbon source.
That's right. And this shift is occurring far more rapidly than anyone anticipated.
Really?
Research indicates that a staggering 34% of the Arctic boreal zone is now a net carbon source, largely due to reduced CO2 uptake by plants and a surge in emissions from wildfires.
Wildfires, yeah.
And this is a huge deal because the Arctic has historically acted as a massive carbon storage vault.
So it's like we've lost a vital ally in the fight against climate change.
We have.
You mentioned tipping points earlier?
Yes.
And this seems like a prime example.
It is.
Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. Imagine a seesaw.
Okay.
Once it tips past a certain point, it's difficult to bring it back to balance.
Yeah.
That's a tipping point in climate change.
Got it.
In the Arctic, the seesaw is tipping because of thawing permafrost.
Right.
Which releases enormous amounts of carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere.
Wow.
This, of course, leads to even more warming.
Oh, I see.
Creating this dangerous feedback loop.
So the warmer it gets, the more permafrost melts. And the more carbon gets released.
Right.
Further accelerating the warming.
Exactly.
Like a runaway train.
Exactly. And this is why scientists are so worried about these tipping points.
Yeah.
They represent thresholds.
Okay.
Beyond which change has become potentially irreversible.
Oh.
And self-perpetuating.
So, not good.
Not good.
Okay, so far it's not exactly a cheery picture.
No.
But you also sent us a video called How Much Progress Have We Made on Climate Change? From Simon Clark's channel.
Yep.
And it actually paints a slightly more hopeful picture.
It does.
It focuses on the phenomenal growth of renewable energy sources like wind and solar power.
That's an important point to highlight.
Right.
The transition to renewable energy is a crucial development in the fight against climate change.
Oh.
The video mentions that over 4,000 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity has been installed globally.
Wow.
Almost all of that since 2000.
Really?
It's truly remarkable progress.
And what kind of impact is this growth in renewables actually having on global emissions? I mean, is it making a real dent?
It absolutely is. What we're seeing is that carbon emissions from electricity generation have already peaked.
Oh, wow.
And are expected to decline further.
That's great.
Even with growing global energy demand.
Wow. So that's a real positive.
It is.
That's good news.
Yes.
And it seems like China is playing a pretty big role in this transition, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
China's massive investments in renewable energy are a major driving force behind the global shift.
Okay.
In fact, they've added twice as much wind and solar capacity as the rest of the world combined.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is.
While China remains the world's largest emitter overall, their per capita emissions are actually lower than many developed countries.
They are.
And their reliance on coal is projected to decrease significantly in the coming years.
Hopefully.
So it's not just about individual countries taking action. No. It's about global collaboration.
It is.
And China's role is absolutely key in this.
It is.
But what about those industries that are notoriously difficult to decarbonize, like steel and cement production?
Mm-hmm.
Those seem like tough nuts to crack.
You're right. Those sectors have always presented a challenge.
Yeah.
The video acknowledges that they've historically been heavily reliant on coal because of their high energy demands.
Right.
However, it also highlights some very encouraging developments.
Oh, good.
For example, there's a growing trend towards electric steel furnaces, which can be powered by clean energy sources.
Right.
And get this, China,
yeah.
being the world's largest steel producer, is now only approving new electric furnaces.
Wow.
That's a huge policy shift.
That's a big deal. So even in industries like steel production, we're seeing a significant move away from fossil fuels.
We are.
But what about cement? That seems even trickier.
Cement production is definitely a tougher challenge.
Yeah.
But there's hope there, too.
Good.
The industry is likely to rely heavily on carbon capture technology to reduce emissions.
Okay.
And the video points out that carbon capture units are already being implemented. And with the right policies and support, both steel and cement production have the potential to drastically reduce their emissions in the coming years.
So it sounds like even those tough industries are starting to turn a corner?
They are.
But what about the role of nature itself in all of this? I'm thinking of things like forests and mangroves.
Ah, yes. Yeah. That brings us to the crucial topic of natural climate solutions.
Okay.
These solutions don't just absorb carbon.
Right.
They provide a whole host of benefits.
Oh, interesting.
For example, protecting and restoring forests not only sequester carbon, but also reduce emissions from deforestation.
Right.
Protect biodiversity. And help regulate local climates.
So many benefits.
Yeah. And the video highlights a positive trend.
Okay, what's that?
Carbon emissions from land use change, including deforestation, have actually decreased by 30% since 2000.
Wow, that's good news.
It is.
So we're making progress, but there's still a lot more work to be done.
There is.
You mentioned mangroves, and one of the videos you sent, the Sahara is changing. Right before our eyes, experts are alarmed.
Yes.
Really emphasize the importance of mangroves in coastal ecosystems.
They're vital.
Why are they so crucial in this whole climate change puzzle?
Mangroves are incredible carbon sinks.
Oh.
Even more efficient than tropical forests.
Really?
They can store up to 4 times more carbon per hectare.
Wow, okay.
They also played a vital role in protecting coastlines from erosion and storm surges.
Right.
Acting like natural barriers.
Interesting.
They're truly remarkable ecosystems.
They sound like superheroes of the coastal world.
They are.
But they're also vulnerable, right?
Sadly, yes. Mangroves are highly vulnerable to rising sea levels.
Okay.
And human activities like deforestation and coastal development.
Right.
Protecting and restoring them is crucial not only for mitigating climate change, but also for preserving these vital coastal ecosystems and the communities that depend on them.
Okay, so we've explored some potential solutions, both technological and natural.
Yeah.
But there's one concept that really stuck with me, and it's a bit of a head-scratcher. Climate overshoot.
Right.
This idea that we're likely to temporarily exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius target before hopefully bringing temperatures back down.
Yeah. You're referring to the CBC News video.
Yes.
If we missed the 1.5C climate target, what's next?
Yes.
It delves into the concept of overshoot, which has become a central part of climate projections.
It has.
Essentially, scientists are saying that even with our best efforts to cut emissions, we're probably going to see a period where global temperatures exceed that 1.5 degree target.
It's likely.
Potentially reaching as high as 1.8 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
And that's expected to happen sometime between 2030 and 2035.
Around then.
It feels a little bit like kicking the can down the road, doesn't it?
It's definitely a cause for concern.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that even with an overshoot, achieving net zero emissions by 2050 is absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Reaching net zero means that we're no longer adding to the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere.
Right.
This is what will allow us to halt further warming and eventually bring temperatures back down.
So even if we overshoot that target,
yeah,
it's not game over?
It's not.
You can still turn things around.
We can.
But it means we need to act fast, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The task becomes even more urgent.
Right.
And it requires even greater efforts to reduce emissions, remove carbon from the atmosphere, and protect those crucial natural systems that can absorb and store carbon, like forests and oceans.
And this brings us to another video you sent,
yeah.
Johan Rockström's TED Talk. The tipping points of climate change and where we stand.
Yes.
He really emphasizes the importance of preserving those Earth systems, especially the ocean.
Rockström's talk is a powerful reminder of just how interconnected the Earth's systems are and how human activities are pushing them towards those critical tipping points.
Right.
He highlights the ocean's role in absorbing heat and carbon dioxide, and the alarming signs that its capacity to do so might be weakening.
It's a pretty stark warning.
It is.
I mean, the ocean is vast.
Yeah.
But it's not limitless.
And this brings us back to the importance of collective action, but also individual choices.
Yes.
Because it can feel like my personal actions are a drop in the ocean, so to speak.
I understand.
Does it really matter what I do as an individual?
It absolutely does.
You think so?
The video, What Earth in 2050 Could Look Like, from TED-Ed, presents two contrasting scenarios.
Okay.
A bleak future if we stay on our current path.
Right.
And a much more hopeful future.
Yeah.
If we take decisive action to mitigate climate change.
Okay.
It's a powerful visualization of the choices we face, both individually and collectively.
I see.
And while large-scale changes in technology and policy are essential, individual actions are also a critical part of the solution.
So what are some of the things that individuals can do to actually make a difference?
There's a great video from Al Jazeera English called What is Climate Change? Start Here. That suggests several impactful actions. Shifting to renewable energy wherever possible. Reducing car use. Eating less meat. And being more conscious consumers in general. It's really about making mindful choices in our daily lives.
So it's about making those daily choices.
It is.
And realizing that those seemingly small actions, multiplied by millions of people, can actually add up to real change.
Precisely.
So it's like each individual action contributes to a collective effort to reduce emissions and protect the planet.
Exactly.
And while those individual actions might seem small, they can have a ripple effect.
They can.
Inspiring others to join the movement for change.
It's contagious. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. Alarming trends, but also some glimmers of hope. The power of both individual and collective action.
It is.
It's definitely a lot to process. But we're just getting started. Okay. You know, while we've been discussing these global trends and technological solutions, one thing that really struck me from the Just Have a Think video was that quote about technology from the book, The Fossil Fuel Industry PR War to Delay Climate Action, 1980-2025.
Oh, right. The one that said something like, technology will definitely play a vital role in improving the world. But the simple fact remains that the world is not on track to reduce greenhouse gas emissions anywhere near quickly enough to stay within the Paris goals.
Exactly. It's a stark reminder that technology alone won't save us. We need systemic change, and we need it. Now, the book really digs into how the fossil fuel industry has actively worked to delay climate action, often using clever PR tactics and lobbying efforts.
It's fascinating and a little bit infuriating to see how these powerful industries have influenced the conversation around climate change. They've downplayed the urgency, promoted those false solutions you mentioned, and really shifted the focus away from the systemic changes that are needed.
It really underscores the importance of critical thinking and media literacy. Especially these days when information and disinformation can spread so rapidly.
Right.
It's like we all need to develop our own internal BS detectors.
You know, it makes you wonder if we'd acted sooner, maybe we wouldn't be in this position of needing to rely on potentially risky technologies like geoengineering.
That's a valid point. The choices we make now have significant consequences down the line. But rather than dwelling on past inaction, I think it's more productive to focus on what we can do moving forward. And it seems like there's growing recognition that we need a multi-pronged approach, reducing emissions, transitioning to clean energy, protecting natural systems, and yes, perhaps even exploring some of those more controversial options like geoengineering.
So it's not about putting all our eggs in one basket. It's about recognizing that we need all hands on deck and a variety of solutions working together.
Precisely. We need to act on multiple fronts simultaneously. And that's where individual actions become so important, because I think a lot of people feel like, what can I possibly do? This problem is so huge. But I think those individual choices do matter.
They create a ripple effect, right? The more people who make those sustainable choices, the more pressure it puts on businesses and governments to follow suit.
Absolutely. And I think it also creates a sense of empowerment, like you're actually doing something tangible to address the problem rather than just feeling helpless. It shifts the narrative from despair to action.
It's interesting that several of the videos you sent talk about this idea of being at a pivotal moment, like we're at a crossroads, and the decisions we make today will have a profound impact on the future.
I think that's a very apt description. There's definitely a sense of urgency, but also a sense of possibility. It's as though we're standing at a fork in the road, and the path we choose will determine the trajectory of our planet and our civilization.
It feels like a lot of responsibility, but also an incredible opportunity. It's like we have a chance to rewrite the story, to create a more sustainable, just, and equitable world. And it seems like young people are really at the forefront of this movement, demanding action and holding leaders accountable.
Absolutely. They're the ones who will inherit the consequences of our choices, and they're not afraid to speak up and demand a better future. Their passion and determination are truly inspiring.
One thing that struck me in the CBC News video was the point that even if we miss the 1.5-degree target, every fraction of a degree of warming we can prevent still matters. It's not about giving up if we don't hit that specific target. It's about continuing to fight for every 10th of a degree.
I couldn't agree more. It's easy to get discouraged by those projections, but every action we take to reduce emissions, no matter how small it seems, can have a tangible impact on the severity of climate change. It's not about achieving perfection. It's about making progress and pushing for continuous improvement.
So it's about finding that balance between the urgency of the situation and the need for hope and perseverance. And I think it's important to acknowledge that this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's going to require sustained effort and commitment over the long haul.
Exactly. And I think it's important to celebrate the wins along the way, no matter how small they might seem. Because if we only focus on the negative, it's easy to burn out and lose hope. We need to find those glimmers of light, those signs of progress that keep us moving forward.
Okay, so we've talked about the science, the solutions, the challenges, the individual actions, but what about the bigger picture? What does all of this mean for the future of humanity and the planet?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The reality is we don't have all the answers. We're in uncharted territory, navigating a world that's changing faster than ever before.
But we do know that the choices we make today, both individually and collectively, will have a profound impact on the kind of future we create.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those decisions will determine the trajectory of our planet and the well-being of future generations. It's a weighty responsibility, but it's also an incredible opportunity to create a world that is not just sustainable, but also more resilient, equitable, and just...
It's like we're writing the next chapter of human history, and we have the power to choose what kind of story we want to tell.
I love that analogy. The story is still being written, and the ending is far from determined. It's up to us, each and every one of us, to shape the narrative.
So what kind of future do you envision? What gives you hope in the face of this challenge?
For me, it's the growing awareness and the incredible groundswell of action that we're seeing around the world. People are waking up to the reality of climate change and demanding change. And it's not just scientists and activists, it's people from all walks of life, from business leaders to artists to everyday citizens. We're seeing this incredible convergence of movements, all pushing for a more sustainable and just future.
You know, it's fascinating how this all circles back to our initial discussion about those record-breaking global temperatures. Remember that surprising spike in January 2025 reaching 1.75 degrees Celsius?
It was a number that seemed to catch everyone off guard, even those who closely follow climate science.
We talked about El Niño and the importance of focusing on those long-term trends, but the CBC News video also touched on a recent discovery that might explain why the warming seems to be accelerating faster than anticipated.
Ah, yes. The research on ship emissions and their impact on cloud formation. It seems those regulations introduced in 2020 to reduce sulfur emissions from ships, while well-intentioned, had an unintended consequence.
Oh.
They reduced the formation of certain reflective clouds, often called ship tracks.
So these ship tracks were actually helping to cool the planet by reflecting sunlight back into space.
Precisely. And their absence has contributed to a slight but measurable increase in warming. It's a classic example of how complex the climate system is. Sometimes, even our efforts to solve one environmental problem can have unforeseen impacts elsewhere.
It's like a domino effect. One change can trigger a whole cascade of others sometimes in unexpected ways.
Exactly. And it underscores the need for comprehensive, integrated solutions that take into account the interconnectedness of these systems.
One of the most thought-provoking ideas I came across in Johan Rockström's TED Talk was his discussion of the corridor of life. This idea that for the past 10,000 years, human civilization has flourished within a relatively narrow temperature range.
Rockström made a powerful point when he said that exceeding 2 degrees Celsius of warming could push us outside of that stable Holocene state, the period that has allowed human civilization to thrive.
It makes those projections of reaching 2.7 degrees Celsius or even higher by the end of the century all the more alarming.
It's a stark call to action.
Yeah.
We need to do everything we can to bend the curve of emissions and prevent that kind of catastrophic warming.
And that brings us right back to those individual actions we were discussing.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel like my choices don't really make a difference in the face of this global crisis, but you're saying we can't afford to think that way. Every single action counts. Every time we choose to walk instead of drive, eat less meat, buy from sustainable companies, or advocate for climate policies, we're sending a message to the market, to our leaders, and to each other that we demand change.
And those individual actions, multiplied across millions of people, can create a powerful ripple effect, influencing larger systems and driving real change.
Exactly.
It's about taking those daily actions,
Yes.
making those choices that align with our values, and recognizing that we're not powerless in this situation.
We're not.
One of the things that's really encouraging is how the climate movement is becoming increasingly diverse and intersectional.
It is.
It's not just a niche issue for environmentalists anymore.
It's not.
People from all walks of life are recognizing the urgency of this crisis and are demanding action.
And they're coming together.
Yes, from indigenous communities to youth activists to faith-based organizations.
It's really great to see.
People are coming together to fight for climate justice and a more equitable and sustainable world. Yeah, and that diversity of voices is so important because it brings a wider range of perspectives and solutions to the table.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that climate change impacts everyone, but not equally.
Right.
And the solutions need to reflect that reality.
Absolutely. It's about understanding that climate change is intertwined with so many other issues, social, economic, and human rights, and the solutions need to address those systemic problems as well.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that this is emotionally challenging work.
Yeah, it can be.
It's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom and feel a sense of despair or even hopelessness.
I understand.
But you mentioned the importance of hope earlier, and I think that's a crucial point.
Yeah, it is.
Hope is not about ignoring the very real challenges we face.
Right.
It's about recognizing that a better future is possible and that we have the power collectively to create that future. It's about finding inspiration in the stories of people who are working for change and in the resilience of the natural world. And it's about believing in the power of collective action, knowing that together we can overcome this crisis and build a world that is just sustainable and thriving for all.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into your collection of sources on climate change.
Yeah.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've explored the urgency of the situation, the interconnected nature of the problem, and the many different pathways towards solutions.
Kind of complex.
We've seen the power of both individual and collective action, and the importance of staying hopeful and engaged even when the challenges seem overwhelming.
You got it.
So, to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you a deeper understanding of this complex issue and a renewed sense of agency.
That'd be great.
Remember, you're not alone in this.
No.
There are millions of people around the world working towards a better future.
Working hard.
Connect with them, get involved, make your voice heard.
Yes.
And never underestimate the power of your individual actions. Every choice, every conversation, every act of service can make a difference.
They all add up.
The future is not predetermined. It's something we create together. So let's choose to create a future where humanity and nature thrive in harmony.
I like that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.